Welcome to the Benji channel. My name is Benji, and today we have another banger of a chapter. And needless to say, the wheels of this final arc of One Piece are continuing to move at an exponential rate. But before I begin, go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe to the Benji channel. And if you haven't already, go ahead and follow the boys on the Geek Giant channel, as well as go ahead and join the Discord. But no more playing around, let's go ahead and dive into chapter 1067 of One Piece, Punk Records. Now, side note really quick, Punk Records sounds like a pretty dope record label, just saying. So we begin the chapter with a cover story page detailing the events of what's happening within Whole Cake Island with Germa and the rescue mission that is helped by Caesar. And if you were thinking that there was going to be a pretty cool reunion between Caesar Clown as well as Judge, then you thought wrong, because both of these guys have beef. Now, I'm not gonna lie, the standoff itself looks pretty dope, but I do want to see the history between Caesar Clown and Judge. Potentially, could they be like rivaling scientists at some point? And I think Caesar Clown was a part of the MADS program. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it would be very funny just to kind of see the interaction between Caesar and Judge and Vegapunk. But on to the actual chapter. We begin this chapter where we left off last chapter with the formal introduction to the real Vegapunk. And Bonnie, of course, isn't too happy. So Bonnie begins by asking Vegapunk whatever happened to his oversized head. And comedically, Vegapunk responds by saying this: "It was getting a tad too long, so I cut it off." Bonnie snaps back saying that we're not particularly talking about hair here. Vegapunk continues and says his head was so big at one point that he almost was the size of a giant. And Vegapunk details to us that this is a result of him eating a brain fruit. Now, I will go ahead and say that I'm not necessarily mad about this per se, but I wasn't necessarily expecting Vegapunk to have any kind of devil fruit powers. But there is a caveat to it. Let me continue. He continues on and tells us what the fruit actually does. It allows Vegapunk to memorize unlimited amounts of knowledge, and his brain grows according to what knowledge he is capturing. So, in essence, his devil fruit works in tandem with his genius level intellect. So it's a devil fruit that doesn't necessarily give him any innate powers other than the fact that it's kind of like a storage utility unit, or storage utility fruit, I guess, basically to hold all of the knowledge that he actually obtains. And what he does with his genius intellect is basically based on the knowledge that he's accumulated. Vegapunk then proclaims that he has the largest brain in the world. Chopper, excited about this news, asked, "Have you got tons of medical knowledge too, Dr. Vegapunk?" And Vegapunk replies, "Yes." And this is super dope because I do feel like Vegapunk at some point in time is going to teach each and every single member of the Straw Hats something very valuable along the way. Especially with Chopper, since he wants to be able to cure any single disease that exists. And then you kind of look at Frankie being more so the technological advancement guy. And then Sanji, of course, having some kind of lineage. And then you have Luffy, who also has some connections with the revolutionary leader, Dragon. Oh, and also our dear Robin, who does have some connection with Vegapunk as well. But moving on, Vegapunk actually does show a lot of humor in this chapter as well, and I absolutely love it. But Vegapunk then moves on, and he kind of describes what the apple-looking thing on his head is, and it's actually an antenna, and is directly connected to a centralized database that stores Vegapunk's brain and all of his knowledge. And it's called Punk Records. He then mentions the 6 clones are the other Vegapunks. And really quick, I do want you guys to notice this little Naruto reference that came from Oda. He kind of mentions Luffy saying it's ninjas or something of that nature. Obviously, you know that this is relations to Naruto Pain, the 6 clones, basically the 6 paths of pain. So I thought that was funny as well. So he speaks on the 6 Vegapunks and says this: "Each one is a facet of Vegapunk and specialize in a particular field of their own. They all hold one of 6 personality traits that in combination would make up Vegapunk." Now this is pretty cool. I think that the way that Oda has introduced this to the story is very unique. The fact that there is a centralized basis of all of Vegapunk's knowledge and it's distributed to all of the 6 clones, yet they each have a personality trait that correlate to Vegapunk. That's a lot of words. But basically, I do think that's very cool. I want to see kind of how this is backed up, though, Punk Records. It seems like it's only one hub for all of this knowledge and information. I wonder if there's like a cloud system where, like, if some enemy person comes into Egghead and tries to basically erase all of Vegapunk's knowledge, is there somebody on standby or some kind of cloud system that is able to kind of back all of this information up that Vegapunk has gathered? But continuing on, Vegapunk also adds this about the 6 clones. They each check in once daily to synchronize the memories and knowledge, and is distributed to the centralized hub, Punk Records. So this makes Jinbei and Luffy kind of confused, but also curious as well. And Vegapunk explains or kind of summarizes that it's basically a technologically advanced library. But Vegapunk's main goal is to optimally have humans share one mind by using Punk Records, allowing everyone to access all of the knowledge that he has accumulated, as well as the knowledge of the human race. But Jinbei actually questions this thought process and basically asks, wouldn't this create conflicting ideologies? But Vegapunk simply responds by saying that science comes at a risk. But Bonnie, who is still frustrated with Vegapunk, actually engages him and basically threatens him with a lightsaber. She wants to know why Vegapunk did what he did to her father, Kuma. And real quick, Vegapunk's reaction to this is hella funny because his tongue is out like Michael Jordan or Albert Einstein, and basically he looks absolutely terrified by the sight of Bonnie. And to be honest, if I saw Bonnie looking at me like this, I mean, I'd be like, hey, what you trying to do? You feel me? Ah! But Vegapunk warns her that the lightsaber she is threatening him with is actually a bug attractant. Bonnie instantly begins to panic because she has a fear of bugs and ends up passing out. But the next panel, we actually get Luffy standing over Bonnie's unconscious body, and he's holding a stag beetle. Now, I know this panel may seem a little bit irrelevant, but if you do know Luffy's history, you do know that he's a big nerd when it comes to beetles. And it's also funny because if you look real closely into the panel, the beetle is actually smiling. Now, if we're going to take it even further, and I want to go ahead and give a big shout out to my guy on Twitter, one of my dear friends, Rez on Twitter. Beetles are actually symbolic of regeneration, renewal, and more prominently, a symbol of the sun in Egyptian tradition. Now, why does that sound so familiar? I wonder why. Oh yeah, I know why. Luffy being compared, or at least having some kind of resonance with the sun god Nika in the story. But I'm not going to necessarily dive too deep into that. I do think that it's a cool revelation, especially as we kind of get more into the story, that Luffy has like this nerding out whenever it comes to beetles within the story. But like I said, I wouldn't put it against Oda if he does have some kind of relation of beetles being so synonymous with Luffy and tying it back to the god within Egyptian tradition, the god of the rising sun. So moving on, we actually cut to a regretful Vegapunk who feels pretty bad for Bonnie and feels that she is justified in the way that she feels for him. He then gets temporarily sidetracked and asks Luffy and the group whether or not they're coming back from Wano. Vegapunk remembers that the fact that a dragon was possibly mentioned in Wano, and it's not Kaido. Luffy answers him and he says he must be talking about Momonosuke. So Vegapunk actually says that the fruit back in Punk Hazard must have been eaten by Momonosuke. Vegapunk goes on to say that the fruit in particular is a failed fruit that was used from some of Kaido's lineage factor. Vegapunk in frustration says that he couldn't get it 100% correct, but Luffy lets him know that the fruit itself gave Momonosuke amazing abilities. And then Vegapunk asks what was the color of the dragon that Momo was, and Luffy says pink. And this sends Vegapunk spiraling. And what we know from this interaction, Vegapunk seems to be a perfectionist when it comes to his work. So moving on, we actually cut back to the ancient robot that we got introduced to, and technically the same robot that we got introduced to Vegapunk in. And Vegapunk gives us some very important information. Check this out. Vegapunk says that this is the legendary Iron Giant that attacked the Holy Land of Marizwa about 200 years ago. Yet it was built 900 years ago. Its mission remains unknown, but from the looks of it, it ran out of power before causing damage. Now, if you guys remember the fire mentioned by Lilith, Vegapunk number 2, Fire or eternal fire is something that has yet to be discovered. Yet, could this eternal flame be the very thing that powered this once great iron giant back in the Void Century? Now, in an attempt not to necessarily get sidetracked, this can mean a whole bunch of things. Maybe this can mean that Sun God Nika will have some kind of activation in order to basically spring up the robot. Or, and this is what I'm kind of hoping for, maybe Frankie is able to come up with a way to actually awaken this great robot, to actually power this iron giant back from the Void Century. Now, continuing on with Vegapunk, he says, either way, I'm sure the scientists of the time were absolutely flabbergasted by such advanced technology. It would have seemed totally alien to them. No one could figure out the reason from where it came from and what was its mission. So soon the world government will order for the giant to be destroyed, yet scientists secretly hid it in an attempt to discover what the iron giant actually was and what could possibly have powered it, without the world government knowing. We finally then cut back to Sanji's group in Vegapunk number 1, Shaka. So Robin actually details us that 200 years ago was the agreement between the world government and the fishmen, basically agreeing upon a peace treaty that involved slavery. And Frankie questions whether or not the robot was able to climb the red line. Vegapunk Shaka details he modeled the huge robot they saw at the beginning of this journey after the ancient robot. And he states, unfortunately, once again, the power source for the original robot has yet to be uncovered. Now, from the looks of this read, it also looks like Sanji's group has full view of Luffy's group. So basically, they're able to see everything that's going on with Vegapunk, Luffy, Jinbei, Chopper, Bonnie, etc. We then cut back to OG Vegapunk, and he lets us know that he did do Bonnie pretty bogus. Luffy even scolds him in a very funny interaction between him and Vegapunk. But ultimately, Vegapunk wants it to be known that he has something that he wants to give to Bonnie. But Vegapunk has one major request of Luffy. Vegapunk wants to be taken away from Egghead Island. And this is very interesting because if this means what I think it means, it could really mean that Vegapunk could be joining the Straw Hats on their next journey, and that journey is possibly going to be Elbaf. Now the only question is, in some kind of interaction, would this mean that Punk Records would be destroyed? And like I said, this kind of dates back to, I wonder if Vegapunk has some kind of backup system for Punk Records, or some kind of cloud system in some kind of capacity. That would be very cool. We then cut back to none other than the CP0 agents, Lucci, Kaku, and Stussy, and they're all wearing some pretty dope masks. I'm not gonna lie, I like this design for Lucci. He looks pretty dripped out. And low-key, CP0 agents are really pimps in disguise. And they are trying to enter Egghead Island basically to return the Kuma Seraphim. But this could be very problematic because, as you know, the Straw Hats are there. And if Vegapunk is seen with pirates, it can be very bad for, I guess, his reputation amongst the world government and the Marines. Now, I'm not 100% sure I wanted this to happen. I did want Zoro and Brook to engage the CP0 agents first before they actually brought back the Seraphim. I wonder if that's still going to happen. It could possibly, but we do see a lot of Sea Beasts basically in front of Lucci and the team. So I kind of do want to see what kind of happens in that front. But moving on, Shaka is actually informed that Lucci has made contact with the island. And Shaka, in a very spicy panel, says this: tell them to hand over the Seraphim and leave. We're declining their request to dock. I doubt agents of the world government will respond well to that, so prepare for battle. Now this is absolutely crazy because I do want to see what particularly happens. But if we're going to be honest, if Luffy just pulls up on Lucci in that group, he's going to body every single one of them. Low-key might be a one-shot, but he's going to body each and every single one of them. Low-key, I'll probably say that Brook and Zoro can probably handle this, to be honest. But come on, like, you know, Lucci is not on that level. Let's be honest. But I do like Lucci. Lucci is that guy. Lucci, he's just that guy. But I do want to kind of see how this turns out. Now, my prediction for this is this may be the catalyst in which the Straw Hats actually embark on the mission to Elbaf with Vegapunk. Or if Vegapunk and the other 6 clones actually engage Lucci and his group, they could just send off Seraphims their way and basically attack them. But we conclude the chapter with this. We cut to Kamabaka Kingdom, and it seems like Kuma has suddenly sprung up. And this has worried the revolutionaries. They are questioning whether or not he is still being controlled by the Navy. He suddenly goes into a sprint, yet since his body seems to be dismantled, he is struggling to make massive headway. But we end the chapter with all 3 of the founding members of the Revolutionary Army. And we see this crazy panel of Dragon, Kuma, and Ivankov. And Dragon says this: "Talk to us, Kuma. Where do you want to go so bad?" And I think Ivankov says this: "Stay with us. We are not done fighting. The Revolutionary Army is just getting started." And that's the end of the chapter. This chapter was amazing. I want to say it's on par with last chapter, since last chapter was more so of an information dump. But unfortunately, there is a break next week. But like I said, this chapter was pretty fire. I really want to know why Kuma is running. It could be related to Sabo and basically an update on his whereabouts, or it could simply be related to Kuma's daughter, Bonnie. And then I really want to know more about this ancient iron giant, as well as whether or not Vegapunk will join the Straw Hats on their next adventure. Who really knows? But thank you so much for all of the love and support on the last couple videos. I see all of your comments. I see everything that you guys say. You guys have really motivated me to kind of get a little bit more consistent. I know I'm not the most consistent One Piece YouTuber that you have seen, but I try to be as consistent as possible, my boys. I got you. I know we don't have too many subscribers as of right now, but my goal for the end of the year is hopefully to hit 100. And honestly, I don't necessarily care too much about the subscribers. It's more so the love of actually just talking about One Piece and just kind of giving off my opinions about certain things that I see within One Piece. But go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe. I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.